Hi, folks. Lots of people are still just signing in. This is Ginny from Knowledge Management. So if you can, you are unmuted right now. So if you are unmuted and not speaking, please do mute yourself so that we don't get the background noise. So let's give folks another minute or so. Thanks. Okay, I think we should get started. Peter, are you there?
I am.
Oh, great. Thank you. Okay. Hi, everyone. It's Ginny from Knowledge Management. Welcome to the Capacity Building Affinity Group. I think we spoke about this before. What we are going to try to do for every meeting is to bring an example of an innovative idea that has been implemented in one of our offices that you could then bring back and think about if that may work for you and your site, and at least to know what's going on with what other sites are doing around building the capacity of the nonprofit sector to own and operate and build affordable housing. So I just wanted to mention that everyone is unmuted because I want people to feel that they can unmute and ask questions. But in the meantime, if you're not speaking, I am going to ask you to put yourself on mute so we don't get background noise. And let's see, maybe we could start out with, before I introduce Peter, maybe we could start out with who's in the room. I'm going to read the list so that you guys know, but then there's a bunch of people who are just on the phone. So I'll ask them to identify yourself. So I'll just go down the list now. And Aaron, Abigail, Adam, Carolyn, Debbie, Eva, Greg, Imani, Jay, Jeannie Cola, Judith Morris, Katya, where am I here now? Laurel, Lisa Deller, Michael Carroll, Nicholas, Nina, Pat McNamara, and I'm assuming it's Rachel Brooks. So if I didn't call your name, can you just identify yourself if you're on the call and not logged into WebEx, just the phone?
Shy Laura, National Director.
Okay, Shy. And then, I'm sorry, who was the other person? Sarah?
Sarah, yeah.
Sarah Stubenberg. Okay. And who else?
Steve Weatherford, Kansas City.
Hey, Steve. Did I miss anybody?
Sharon Lewis, New York City office.
Hey, Sharon. Okay. So without further ado, I'm going to introduce Peter to the group, Peter Madden, who he did speak a few years ago with Sam and Mark Yar when this idea was still more on the at the very beginning implementation phase. And so I'm excited that he's been able to, because he's very busy, like all of us, right? But super busy with this new entity, kind of groundbreaking, and you should have received the Goldstein Hall write-up that I sent you. And this is being recorded, and you will get I will post the PDF of the PowerPoint up on Jostle, so you'll have all the information. But without further ado, I'm going to introduce Peter Madden, who's the CEO of JOE, Joint Ownership Entity. Peter comes with a deep background in community development housing, affordable housing, working at the Lower Manhattan Development Corp, at HPD in the Distressed Asset Management Finance Program and also the Storm Recovery Program, and more recently doing some innovative consulting work with Robin Hood Foundation, Enterprise in the Center for New York City. So he's been at Joe now for, Peter, what, like 2 years, 2.5 years?
Almost 3 years.
Almost 3 years, but who's counting, right?
Yeah.
And so without further ado, and Peter, I'll change the slides for you so you could just say, you know, change slide. And then if anybody in the audience has a question, you know, feel free to unmute yourself, ask the questions directly. I mean, if you don't want it, if you want to just send it in via Q&A, that's fine too, but we'd like to make this a conversation so that you have, it's more interesting for all of us. Okay, so without further ado, Peter, I'm going to sign it over to you.
Great. Thanks everyone for inviting me to do this today. And, I would
now we're having, I can't hear you that well, Peter.
I think it looks like somebody else might have unmuted.
Somebody else what? You know what, Peter?
Background.
Okay, so hold on. I think I'm going to mute everybody and then send your questions in, and we'll unmute at the end. But just because we need to, hold on, communicate participants. Okay, mute all. Okay, so participant. Okay, Peter, can you hear me?
Yep. Can you hear me?
Okay, yeah. Sounds like there's a little bit of feedback for whatever reason. Keep talking, let me see, because then I may make you presenter and have you change the slides. That may make it easier.
I can change the slides as is, so that's not a problem.
Oh, okay.
Are you still getting feedback?
Okay, I think when I mute myself, it gets better. So I'm going to let you do the presentation.
Okay. Thank everyone for inviting me to do this. So I know everyone here is not from New York City, so I wanted to talk a little bit today about the genesis of Joe and kind of how it fits into the New York City affordable housing landscape, and then sort of walk you through the business model of how we work, and then finally give some sort of case study examples of projects that we're working on. So, in New York City, as you are probably well aware, the affordable housing industry as it exists really is a product of the late 70s, early 80s, when the city's economy was really in the dumps, and the city government ended up foreclosing on hundreds of thousands of residential units. And then under the Koch administration, the city developed multiple programs to get this residential stock back into private ownership. And I'm sure this is sort of been, repeated in cities all over the country, where the groups that kind of raise their hands to take some of these initial properties in more distressed neighborhoods were community development corporations. So, Joe is a membership organization, and we are made up of CDCs, of New York City CDCs. And these CDCs, as I was just saying, many of them got into this game almost 40 years ago in some cases. And what time, with the development of the tax credit program and multiple city, state, federal subsidies, as we all know, for-profit developers have learned that that developing affordable housing is a lucrative business, and for-profits often end up owning their construction companies and their management companies. So they have multiple ways to earn a profit in this industry. So the CDC sector in New York has started to feel, I shouldn't say started, for a while has felt like they are being crowded out of this market of the in New York City by these for-profit developers, some of whom are quite large and have really developed a specialty in affordable housing. So about 5 or 6 years ago, a subset of what became my current board of directors, they formed a working group to start to think about an idea like Joe. And Lisk was involved in that from day one. Denise Scott, and then eventually Sam, and Lisa Arturo have all been very engaged since the earliest days of Joe. And the idea of Joe, the sort of very high level, the postage stamp idea is all these CDCs are sort of engaged in this pilot effort to pool their financial resources in an attempt to do their business more effectively and to compete more effectively with the for-profit developers in New York City. Now, as our name suggests, excuse my allergy cough, as our name suggests, the joint ownership entity, this is actually about more than just pooling financial resources. This is actually, our business model is actually transferring ownership of CDC portfolios under one ownership umbrella. So let me give you a concrete example. When a CDC in New York City decides to join Joe, they look at their existing portfolio of real estate and they select one or more of their projects and they commit to transfer that property into Joe. And a property transfer looks like this. There is a local, I shouldn't say a local, there is a project-specific owner, an HDFC, Housing Development Finance Corporation, that owns the project. And this is how most CDC projects that aren't, limited partnerships are owned in New York, is through these HDFCs. When an HDFC property is transferred into Joe, that HDFC remains the fee owner, the deed holder of the property, but that HDFC enters into something called a nominee agreement with a Joe LLC. And the effect of that nominee agreement is that the beneficial interest in the property is transferred to Joe. So what CDCs are agreeing to in joining Joe is they're saying, we're going to transfer the beneficial interest of the property into Joe. We are then, the CDC, going to get a seat on the Joe board. And then as a result of being on the Joe board, we're going to have an ownership interest in the entire Joe portfolio, and we're going to realize some economic benefit from our participation in Joe. And I can talk a little bit more about that specifically. So, what these next two slides show is just to give you a sense of where our portfolio is at. So Joe right now has 11 CDC members. Today we own 1,500 apartments. We're actually on track by June 31st of this year to own over 2,000 apartments. And we have commitments among our 11 members to own about 3,400 units. So we're a little less than halfway to our to our pipeline of ownership. but I'm pretty pleased that we're at 1,500 already. So these slides, a little bit out of date, I'll admit, but these give you a sense of where our properties are located. And there are two maps here. What you're looking at here is Brooklyn. You'll see there's sort of a hot spot here in Bedford-Stuyvesant, Clinton Hill neighborhood of Brooklyn. Sort of in the bottom right-hand corner, you'll see is in Brownsville. That's actually a cluster of properties where we worked with our member St. Nick's, and LISC gave us an acquisition loan to acquire those properties from a private developer. And then, so a lot of our portfolio is in Brooklyn, and then the remainder, as this next map shows, is Upper Manhattan, Harlem, and North. And then the South Bronx. The cluster of green dots you see there is a Joe member called the Banana Kelly Community Improvement Association, who, as you can see, have made a very large commitment to Joe.
Peter, can you hear me?
Yeah.
Oh, there's a question from the audience. Can you talk a little bit more about the legal structure and how that works? Okay.
Sure.
Thanks.
So, and actually, that's the next slide. Might help us understand a bit. So, as I said, there are 11. Whoops.
There you go. You're okay.
Okay, there we go. I'm back. So we have 11 members. Most of those members have been engaged since this was, a working group. And what that working group ended up spending really over 2 years doing was writing the membership agreement for Joe. I described the process where a member selects a portfolio and we do this transfer of beneficial ownership. And when a property is put into Joe, we give it a value. So as part of our membership agreement, we developed a valuation methodology, which is a little bit. It's not a strict appraisal. It's sort of a mix and match of a few methodologies. But the point of our valuation methodology is it determines that CDC's interest in the entire portfolio. And that becomes important when Joe is going to make cash distributions, which we're going to start very soon and which we're going to do once a year. We're going to pool our revenue. We're going to pay Joe's asset management costs. We're going to reserve some money in a portfolio-wide project reserve. But then with cash that we, with our true net revenue every year, distributions to our members, and the amount that a member gets is a function of that valuation of their projects that they've put in. And as I said, if you're a CDC and you put a property into Joe, you get a seat on the board and you get one vote. So whether you put in 50 units or 500 units, you still get one vote. But in terms of the economic benefit, that's a function of this valuation methodology.
So Peter, there's another question from the audience, and I'm only interrupting you because I think it kind of goes along with what you're talking about. So how does this affect the books of the individual CDCs? Are these units, are they off their balance sheet now?
Yeah, I mean, that's what makes this model, I don't want to say dramatic, but I think different than anything we've seen. We haven't found a comparable example in the U.S. yet because these properties, Joe owns the real estate, and the Joe audit reflects the value of all of these properties. So all assets and liabilities are transferred to Joe and will no longer appear on the audited financials of St. Nick's Alliance or Banana Kelly. So that, that's what, I've had a few conversations over the years about folks thinking about, could we do Joe in our city? And I think to get CDCs to understand the value of doing something that, that really changes their ownership stake in the project, that's been I think that's what makes this model pretty unique.
So taking St. Nick's, for example, they sold a lot, they have a lot of properties in your portfolio. And so
Yep.
it moves the properties from their balance sheet to Joe's balance sheet. But then they do own a percentage, right, that's still on their balance sheet as an asset, correct?
Well, it doesn't quite work like that. It will not show up. So their ownership interests, So in terms of the property, the value of the property is shown exclusively on Joe's audit. For St. Nick's, what they will report every year is revenue that they receive from Joe. So every year when we do these cash distributions, that will be unrestricted revenue to St. Nick's and to all Joe members.
And will that be more than they would be? Is the goal to for them to earn more revenue from that portfolio being in Joe rather than them property and asset managing that property themselves?
That is the goal. The goal is that, as we achieve a real scale, and 1,500 is good, but I'm excited to be at 3,000. That Joe can take advantage of those economies of scale and lower expenses. So we can lower property insurance rates across the portfolio. Like we see right now in the Bronx, property insurance for a multifamily apartment building can be 30 to 40% more expensive than a comparable building in Brooklyn. I think there's a lot of problematic history that's probably goes into how insurance companies calculate that. But that's an example of if we can get one property insurance policy for across our entire portfolio, that's a significant expense that can come down. We've already started doing bulk purchase of electricity and natural gas contracts, and again, at our scale, we start to become an attractive customer to utility suppliers. So, to answer your question, Jenny, as we start to kind of hack away at these expenses, that will result in greater revenue for the whole portfolio, which ultimately groups are seeing more cash from these properties than they would be if they weren't part of Joe.
And hence strengthening their ability to compete against the for-profits.
Yeah, exactly. And another on that theme, one of the most, certain members of Joe are very involved in new development. So both in refinancing and recapitalizing their existing stock, but also in pursuing new construction opportunities. And as you all know, one challenge for CDCs is securing construction financing and having the ability to guarantee construction loans. So one reason that these members who are active in development see a value to Joe is that the Joe balance sheet which has already surpassed the size of some of our members, that can be used as essentially, auxiliary sort of financial strength for these CDCs as they go to do new deals. So Joe can sign on as a co-guarantor of a construction loan with our members. So that's another sort of it's not cold hard cash, but it is a financial benefit from participating in Joe.
So you mentioned earlier that that you borrowed from LISC with one of the CDCs. Is that an example of where you provided the guarantee, or?
Not on that specific example with St. Nick's, because that was sort of a unique case where St. Nick's was able to have other collateral available to secure that loan. But we have done this on another acquisition loan where we have co-signed on the guarantee with two other members.
Okay, but that wasn't with LISC then?
Correct, that was not with LISC.
Okay. You mean you're not dealing exclusively with LISC? Okay, I'll let you continue. I'm going to mute myself.
Clone you guys, I would, but.
Oh, okay. You keep breaking up a little bit. Are you on a speaker by any chance?
I'm not on the phone. I'm talking into my computer.
Oh, okay. So just keep close to it if you can, because it's going in and out a little bit.
Okay. I see a question here. Can LIHTC properties be transferred into Joe? Yes, they can, and that has happened. Excuse me. In really two ways. One is that Joe has created a general partner that then replaces the existing general partner. In other examples, Joe has essentially joined the existing Joe essentially becomes a member of the general partner in addition to the CDC continuing to be a member of the general partner. So yes, we have done that. So maybe I talked about the examples, a few examples of asset management. One being property insurance, another being the bulk purchase of electricity and natural gas. So one other thing that is sort of fun to talk about, but also real dollar impacts, is that we've been working on a few different solar projects. So, since a lot of our stock are small buildings that are clustered into projects, one thing we've been looking at is the use of solar arrays on roofs as a way to reduce the owner's electric bill. And this is the type of thing where I think the role of Joe and Joe having its own staff, this is a nice example, because sort of figuring out that just the sort of technical, mechanical aspects of design a solar array, how do you select the right installer. We were lucky enough to get a planning grant from the New York State Energy Department, or sort of the energy efficiency wing of the New York State government, where we were able to do a feasibility study across our whole portfolio, and as a result did an RFP for a design build solar installer. So we've been able to sort of make solar panels a non-exotic a component of development projects that we work on. So that, and again, that's a nice example where we've taken this one element to sort of spread the lessons across multiple CDCs who are in Joe. Whoop. So I see another question here. Does Joe acquire troubled properties? We do. And, obviously there is an incentive. I talked about the cash flow distributions. There is an incentive, from our perspective, to have good cash flowing projects. But the board really since day one, I think, has been very deliberate that Joe should have a mix of projects, cash flowing and weaker projects, and that the more cash flowing projects will, in a sense, cross-subsidize the smaller deals. But really, I think the opportunity for Joe with smaller deals is to figure out, smaller troubled deals, is to figure out how do you make them into solid cash flowing projects. And we're sort of really putting the rubber to the road on testing the following theory, which is for small deals, and when I say that in the New York City context, less than 40 units that have trouble, that one way to solve that issue is to consolidate those projects with other projects under one new ownership umbrella. So, for example, we are working on this slide here that I'm showing, a project we're calling the Central Brooklyn Cluster, which is a bunch of deals, almost all of which are reaching year 15. And Lisa and Manny are doing lots of work to help us unwind these at year 15, and some are
Peter, we've lost you. Hello? Peter? Hello? Peter, we can't hear you. Peter, maybe what you could do is dial in. Hold on, I'm going to send you a quick email with the information. Okay. Okay, let's see. Okay. Peter, we lost you totally. 415-655-0002, and the access code is 645-713-866. See if that works. Everyone bear with me while I see if I could get Peter on the phone. Wonders of modern technology. 6, 4, 5, 7, 1, 3, 8, 6, 6. 4, 5, 1, 3, 8, 6. All right, let me see if I can get Peter. Hi, I've unmuted everyone, so.
They have
Hi,
a website.
guys.
You can probably
Hi.
find out what you want there.
Hi, everyone. I unmuted you. Can you hear me?
Yes, we can.
Okay, I don't have any idea what happened to Peter. It went dead, and I see that he got.
I am back.
The presentation was like
Oh,
a 5-hour long.
Okay,
webinar.
so Peter, let me mute the rest of the folks, and then I can then I'll unmute you. Okay.
One time it was like a 5-hour
Okay.
thing.
Peter. 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 Okay. Peter. Okay, here I see him. Okay, Peter, you're unmuted. Okay, continue.
Okay. There we go.
That was weird. So much for our technology, right?
Yeah. So what I was saying there is, when we've been doing these sort of consolidation projects with multiple different CDCs, one nice thing has been that, so for example, in the Central Brooklyn project, there are 4 different Joe members. One of the members, St. Nick's, they are a larger group, they have a larger staff. They've been acting as the development sort of project manager and leader. And that, has the benefit of both building capacity for St. Nick's, but also for the other groups involved who simply didn't have that capacity. That's kind of part of the reason that they joined Joe, is that they needed additional staff support to get deals like this done. So that's been a really nice model. And I'm intrigued to sort of figure out if we can, other ways where, staff from a high capacity CDC could help, a smaller CDC with things like compliance issues, accessing other pools of city funding that might be helpful. But I think there's a lot of promise there. One thing about the model that I always sort of skip over that I should just make clear is that Joe is not in the business of property management. Property management stays with each group. And within our universe, a few of our CDCs have their own property management companies. So obviously in joining Joe, they didn't want to give up any management business. In other cases, there's been some third party, they use third-party property managers. One nice Joe's success story that Joe can't really take credit for, but I'll call it a Joe success story anyway, is that one of the properties that has just been transferred into Joe about a month ago, that CDC did an RFP to select a new property manager for this deal. It's called South Bronx Catch. So South Bronx Catch, this property which came into Joe, they ended up selecting another Joe member, Banana Kelly, as their property manager. So we now have a property in Joe contributed by one member, and then another member of Joe is their new property manager. So this is kind of the things that we're sort of learning as we go about the sort of opportunities within that sort of grow from Joe business model.
Peter, how many people do you have on staff, and what are their positions?
Right now we have 2 people, it's myself and then Allison, who's our director of asset management. We are, I think, we're at a point of maturity where in the next, I would say 6 to 12 months, we'll bring on 2 more people, and primarily the function that we really need is just more asset management work. I want us to be doing a more thorough job in analyzing all of the data that we are collecting, because we are getting monthly trial balances from projects, we're getting annual budgets, and we want to be able to compare project performance to how groups budgeted. We've done a pretty good job already of compiling all of our annual project level audits and looking at that data set and looking at I highlighted earlier this discrepancy about property insurance in New York City, and that's something that our data really backs up. So I really want us to be really rigorous about looking at the data that we have, and then we just have a lot of these other asset management initiatives related to solar and other utilities, and looking at more energy efficiency, this sort of broader property insurance project that we're working on. I'm excited to have more staff to really dig into each of those issues. Yeah.
So I'm assuming that that each of the members are on the board and they have one vote. So do you have a dashboard or some sort of, what sort of metrics do you give them so that they could monitor from a governance perspective what's going on?
Yeah, we've been, so we don't yet. And in a sense, we've been that we've been able to I don't want to say back burner that, but so many of the projects that are coming into Joe are simultaneously going through some sort of refinancing and recapitalization, that we're actually, I think, sort of going to have a nice ability to say, okay, this project was, construction was completed in June 2019, and that's when we can really start looking at project performance. So, we have asset management standards, and we sort of, we compare, specific properties to those. But we're still working on a good sort of portfolio level snapshot with key metrics as you're discussing. But that's really a goal for the next 12 months.
And as far as growth goes, what is kind of like does your business plan show you in 5 years as far as number of units under management?
As I said, we have commitments from our current members. We have a pipeline of about 3,400 units, and our sort of long-term financial model has shown us reaching 5,000 units. There's not really any science to that. I think that we have this pipeline of 3,400, I am confident that we will continue to grow, but I'm not at this point concerned that we are too small. I mean, that's not really a concern at all, especially as I said, so many of our projects are being refinanced. We have certain deals that are that cash flow really well. We have a handful of project-based Section 8 deals or deals with a lot of rental subsidy. So, within that 3,400 pipeline, I think we have a good mix of deals that need some TLC and can be improved. But then I think we also have some very good, cash flowing projects. So we're definitely in the business of growth, but I'm not at this point, I'm not concerned about a lack of pipeline.
Has there been any thought about taking this to another level, like either regionally or nationally?
So not in any systematic way. There have definitely been conversations, and actually Lisa arranged for me last year to be on a panel at the CHAM conference, the Asset Management Conference, and there was a very interesting story that I had not heard about how there were a few folks who had looked at sort of a joint ownership model among various rural CDCs, so CDCs that were pretty geographically dispersed, and seeing if they could figure out a joint ownership model, really with the goal of helping them do, I think it was re-syndications. And it didn't really get off the ground. And obviously when you're talking, and it was across multiple states, I should say too.
Right.
So I thought that was a really interesting effort, but I think a lot of what makes Joe work is the geographic density of New York City, which, when we talk about consolidating projects, that becomes real when a contractor says, "Oh yeah, I can get to all those buildings next week,"
right.
Instead of saying I got to drive 3 hours to get to the rest of this project.
Right. And we have a question from our underwriter in our Rhode Island office. Jay, I'm going to unmute you now. You could ask your question. You're unmuted now, Jay. Jay, are you there? Okay, then I'll ask the question. For LIHTC properties, you need to amend partnership agreements to move the Joe asset. And then let's see, to move the Joe asset management fee above the line. If not, what if properties don't have enough cash flow to pay an additional asset management fee?
Right. So yes, we have typically had to amend the LPAs when Joe joins the general partner. And you make a very good point about the fact that cash flow is pretty restricted in most limited partner structures. So I will admit that we haven't totally solved for that yet. There are a few limited partnerships in Joe. Well, we have a mix. There are some LPs where I simply know that for the next year or two, there's going to be no revenue to Joe from those projects, and that but once that they go through year 15 and are restructured, that there will be. But then there are other structures. Excuse me. There are other LPAs that do permit for some net revenue to be released to the general partner.
Okay. I think we have one more slide left, or maybe two more. Let's see.
Yeah, I don't talk about this one in depth. This was just more about the fun we're having with solar. And actually, LISC is working with us on an innovative solar project where we are trying to leverage the federal solar tax credit, the ITC, the investment tax credit. And the way that we would do that is bundling a bunch of roofs as one project. And we would, the project would in part be funded by the solar tax credit, but also by a loan from LISC. And what makes it an interesting project is that we are asking LISC to make a loan that is not secured by the real estate, but rather LISC's security would be that if we were to default, LISC could take over the electricity generated by the solar panels.
I don't know if we want that, do we?
Well, I'm not sure the LISC credit committee has totally signed on yet, but we did get pretty far actually. So.
It's kind of like once there was somebody got like a delivery of egg futures or something, eggs that they bought on the future exchange. They got like a gazillion dozens of eggs that would just like did not make any sense. This will be interesting because I sit on credit committee too, so I'll find it interesting.
Good. Yeah, I think this one's a little more sensible than your egg example. But
yeah, I think so, probably. The eggs didn't work. And then I think you have one more. Oh, is that the same? That's the same one, right?
Oh, yeah, that appeared twice there. Yeah.
Okay. Oh, wait, sorry. Okay. Did you want to talk? You spoke about this one already, right?
I did this one earlier. This is the Central Brooklyn project of the 8 different members doing one project. Or excuse me, 8 different projects being consolidated under one.
Right.
Yeah.
Okay. Are there other questions from the audience for Peter? So do you think that has there been specific cities that have come to you and others involved in formulating Joe? Has there been big cities that are thinking about doing this?
The one that I think is thinking about it most seriously is San Francisco, and
okay.
Partially they're pretty well educated about this because a key sort of ingredient in the Joe mix has been the consulting firm Forsyth Street Advisors,
right.
whose office I actually sit in. They are involved in a number of different affordable housing funds across the nation, and they were also involved in the creation of Joe on a consulting basis. But I think they like the model, so they sort of tell their other clients about it. And in California specifically, I think there are a lot of the nonprofit developers do a lot of the affordable housing work. And in San Francisco in particular, I think there is more of there are some neighborhood-based groups like we have in New York, so that again the geographic element of being in a city might make it feasible in San Francisco, but I haven't had any real in-depth conversations with them.
Right, and then we have another question from the audience. Has an entity ever left Joe, and are there particular markets that are better suited to Joe than others?
I didn't hear the second part of the question. Have people left?
Has an entity ever left Joe? And then are there particular markets that are better suited to Joe than others, which we just kind of touched on?
Yeah. So nobody's left yet. As I said, we have 11 members. We don't own projects yet from each group, but that's sort of a function of when certain deals are going to close and when we need certain consents from lenders. Once a member puts a property into Joe, that property is locked for 10 years. The reason that our membership agreement has that requirement is that, if the Joe balance sheet is truly going to be a source of collateral and for guarantees, the Joe portfolio needs to be pretty stable. So all the board agreed that there is a minimum 10-year commitment to being in Joe, and we expect that the model appears to be working so far, and should it continue to, that there wouldn't be much of an incentive to leave Joe. And in fact, our membership agreement also essentially gives Joe a right of first refusal in the example that a CDC were to pull a project out and try and sell it, that Joe would have a right of first refusal to buy that property. So everyone has stuck with us so far. And and then in terms of the markets, I think it's fair to say New York has some kind of particular aspects of the market. The geographic density, the fact that nonprofits see a real rationale for Joe and that they are really driving this. The CDCs are really driving Joe. And I think, frankly, I really just think that in part, Joe has been fortunate to have the personalities who have been involved. I really, I'm an executive director who really likes going to my board meetings because my board is very engaged and very thoughtful about Joe. And I think they see the potential value, and they are able to sort of step back from their organization's self-interest to consider the interest of Joe as a whole. And I wouldn't minimize the role that kind of having the right executive directors sort of driving the process has really helped Joe happen.
Yeah, it's all about relationships and personalities, right?
Yeah, so important.
Definitely. Well, we are approaching the hour, and this has been super interesting. Everybody, in the invite, I put in a link to the Joe NYC website so you could see more information. I encourage you, if you want to discuss further, to reach out, especially to our New York City folks, Sam and Lisa Deller, to talk to them and see if this would be something that if it makes sense for your neighborhoods, and to increase CDC capacity. We'll continue in our series of bringing you things that are actually really happening in the field that you could put up for consideration in your local sites as a way of increasing affordable housing developer, nonprofit affordable housing developer capacity. So if that's it, I don't think we have any other questions. I want to give Peter a big thank you for taking time out of your day to educate us. And if anybody has any suggestions for other things, maybe you want to highlight something that's happening in your neck of the woods, or just other things you may have heard about, please pop me an email, and we'll take it from there. So we'll talk again next month. So thanks, everyone, and thank you, Peter.
Thanks a lot. Thanks for having me.
Okay, thank you. Okay, great. We look forward to seeing where you are in a year from now.
Me too.
Okay, take care.
Bye-bye.
Bye.